The Time Basement Show version 2.6 just dropped, and they have added a few new songs and characters while also revamping some of the older scenes as well. I'm going to go through and explain the new characters first, and then I'm going to go ahead and cover the lore of each of the older characters and add their new visuals as well. Now, the newest additions to this mod are going to be the EXE characters in the War of Whisker song. We have Nibbles, Jerry, Spike, and Tom in their EXE forms, and I think that this is just a nod to the original Sonic.exe mods, the ones that were popular a few years back. We even see many of the characters have been ripped apart just like Sonic.exe did to Eggman, Tails, and Knuckles, with obviously Nibbles, Tom, and Spike taking their roles. And the jump scares that keep popping up are supposed to be based on the original Sonic.exe face that was jump out at you. And of course, Jerry kind of takes the place of Sonic.exe in this mod, which kind of makes sense because I feel like he's the star of this mod overall. And now that we covered the new characters, I want to go ahead and give you the lore of the older characters while also adding their new visuals. And I think the first character that we're going to start off with is going to be Starved Butch. After a bit of research, I learned that originally Butch was just a normal cat that was living on the streets and was pretty much starving. One day he saw a little duck walking around the streets who may have been quackers from the old school Tom and Jerry cartoon, and naturally the starving cat chased down a little duck and devoured it. But this is where everything actually goes wrong. Apparently this duck had been experimented on and had just recently escaped the scientists. And it seems that once the duck was eaten, it made Butch turn into a monster. His fur turned gray, his eyes became these pools of darkness, and he has this dark urge to murder and devour other animals. His first victim in this new form was Tom, who he managed to lure out to the junkyard before he ripped him apart. After that, his next target was Jerry and his nephew. Now, if you're wondering where Spike comes into play, he basically noticed that everyone has disappeared and he goes to look for them, only to see starved Butch standing over their bodies. But instead of running away, Spike looked around the junkyard for anything he could use as armor and a weapon and decided that he was either going to avenge his friends or die trying, showing that he definitely has that dog in him. Now, for those of you who are curious to what Starved is actually saying in the mod, I'll go ahead and translate it for you. He's saying it's better to meet them in another world than to spend the rest of your life in despair. Come on, Spike, make your choice. I am disaster itself. The next characters are WB Spatter Tom and also 1945 Tom. WB Tom is one version of Tom that not only managed to kill Jerry, but was able to do it in a gruesome way, which is why we see him holding the decapitated mouse in his hand. 1945 Tom is from a creepypasta that really took off on a Chinese website called Zihu. And just like WB Tom, 1945 also manages to kill Jerry, but the creepypasta also has some foreshadowing to tragedies that would happen in real life, making this version of Tom much darker than the former. Now, they did add a cutscene kind of explaining how girlfriend and boyfriend end up in this situation. And honestly, I don't know how they keep getting sucked into TVs and video games, but since both of these versions of Tom are murderers, I guess they thought that the two teenagers would be easy targets. Or at least that was until we see girlfriend use her mnemonic abilities against WB. Now, considering that she obviously has all this power, I don't really understand how 1945 was able to tie her up, but that's really neither here nor there. The next new character is Jammy, and this guy is basically just a version of Sunky, meaning that he doesn't even want to hurt anybody here. The only reason that he has a knife is so that he can cover his toast in jam. And apparently, the song has some references to popular Chinese children's songs, but I have no idea what they are. If I have any Chinese people watching this video or just people who happen to speak Chinese, maybe you can enlighten us if I play a small clip here. Next we have Tom on Wheels, and this character is based on an old Tom toy from 1995 called Scary Cat on Friction Wheels. The toy used to have a page on eBay, which is why we see Girlfriend browsing an eBay page in the mod, but it seems that the page no longer exists in real life. And funny enough, there's actual lore for how she actually got onto this page. Apparently, Girlfriend clicked on the toy on accident, but lost control of her mouse/cursor, which is now boyfriend, I assume. And now she's just basically waiting for the battle to end so that she can actually go buy something that she actually wants. Next, we have a character called Freeze Jerry, and he seems to be based on an episode of Tom and Jerry from 1964 called Somebody Loves Me. In the episode, we see Tom throws Jerry out of the house, but starts to feel bad when he realizes that the mouse will freeze because it's basically like a snowstorm outside. In the mod, however, it seems like the code actually makes Jerry go insane, which is why we actually see him battling Boyfriend instead of trying to find warmth in the mod. Next, we see a character called Droopy Dog, and this version of him is inspired by a Family Guy episode called Saturated Fat Guy. The reason that he has that big smile on his face is that he basically had a facelift, but even though he's smiling, he's still depressed, which is why he's holding that snub nose to his chest. D-Side Boyfriend is there to help him technically, but he doesn't actually believe that the Toon can hurt himself. But apparently, Derpy can actually hurt himself if he pulls the trigger, which means that he will be gone forever, but for some reason D-Side Boyfriend believes that since he's a cartoon character, he can't actually do the deed. The last new character is called Nipali, and he's a old school character from Tom and Jerry as well. He was basically like a lab rat that was used to test a bunch of drugs. They usually disguised it as cheese. Now, with that being said, I don't know why Skid and Pump are in the lab, but just judging by their animation, they usually end up in some of the weirdest situations anyway, so I guess it's not too weird to see the boys here. But as far as we know, the boys are just there to play with the mouse. And since Nipali usually spends a lot of time alone, he's happy to actually have some people there to keep him company. So that song is actually just kind of wholesome, which makes sense because it's Skid and Pump. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the songs that we covered before. A few of them have been revamped, so I'll be explaining some of the lore there, using some of my older clips, and also putting in some new clips from the update. And with that being said, let's start out with the Tom's Basement lore. Now, the backstory for this one is pretty dark, so if you're a Tom and Jerry fan, this one might not sit right with your spirit. This creepypasta starts off by giving us the backstory of the 13 Tom and Jerry Shorts animators whose name happened to be Gene Dotch. This man was infamous for the poor quality and disturbing nature of his Tom and Jerry animations. They also had badly done sound effects, animations, and more realistic violence. It was rumored that Gene didn't like the concept behind his Tom and Jerry Shorts, but he was being pressured into making them, and he wanted the people who watched them to actually feel bad for liking this concept. Now that we have that background knowledge, we can dive into the actual creepypasta proper, and it starts like this. There was a 16-year-old boy walking home when he tripped over something. Looking down, he noticed that it was a videotape. This tape had the name Tom's Basement written on it. Now, the first thing that the young man noticed when he actually played the tape is that it took place in a typical Tom and Jerry home. The one thing that was very different was that Tom's owner was this fat, very angry, violent man. We get to see an example of this when Tom is sleeping next to the basement door, and the man literally walks over and stomps on his tail, causing an excruciating amount of pain to Tom. The owner then yells at Tom to never go down into the basement. Tom is clearly terrified at this point, and he runs away to another room. Next, we see Jerry stick his head out of his mouse hole, but he doesn't look like the normal Jerry. He looks like nightmare fuel, or at least an evil version of Jerry. And he gets this evil look on his face, and he follows Tom into the next room. Now, the next few moments are normal Tom and Jerry shenanigans, but what Tom doesn't realize is that Jerry is actually tricking him into chasing him towards the basement door. But each time Tom gets close to the basement door, his owner catches him and inflicts some type of pain onto him. And unlike in a regular cartoon, these injuries don't go away, but they stay with him throughout the whole episode. Now, this happens 3 times, and each time Tom is more bruised and he ends up limping, looking like something is broken. After this, Tom literally starts to beg Jerry not to bother him anymore, but he's not really talking, he's just crying and mumbling, but you can understand what he's trying to convey through his body language. Jerry simply laughs at him and pushes him back to the basement door. The owner catches Tom again, but this time he goes ballistic and he's really gonna hurt Tom. And it seems like Jerry finally takes some pity on Tom because he actually stabs the owner at this part. And this is where Tom and Jerry actually work together to take the owner's limp body down into the basement. Now, this is where the plot twist happens. The owner wasn't protective of the basement for no reason. The basement is actually filled with dozens of bodies in various forms of decay. Tom and Jerry shake hands and it seems like they've triumphed over the serial killer. But Jerry gets an evil look on his face again and stabs Tom. unaliving him and throwing him on the pile with the other bodies. The creepypasta ends with Jerry putting up a for sale sign on the yard of the house. Now that you know the creepypasta story, you can understand why Jerry actually has a knife in this mod. And this also explains why boyfriend and girlfriend are actually in the house. It seems that in this mod, boyfriend and girlfriend are actually looking to buy their own home together. And when they see the for sale sign, of course they go to the open house to actually check the place out. This is where they actually go into the basement and they find Tom's body, and that's when Jerry pops out. And of course, boyfriend has to rap battle against him in order to get out of there with their lives. The next character that I want to talk about in the mod is going to be Depressed Tom, and this one you may not be familiar with because he's from a very old animation from like 1956 called Blue Cat Blues. Now, in the original episode, we actually do get to see Tom sitting on the train tracks, and he's super depressed, and he's just waiting for the oncoming train to come, and he doesn't plan to get off the tracks, if you get what I'm putting down. Now, during this time, something interesting is happening, and that's that Jerry is actually kind of narrating what's going on here. And if you're a Tom and Jerry fan, you'll know why this is interesting, because usually those two don't talk at all. Now, what we find out is that Tom is actually depressed because he fell in love with a beautiful white cat. Some of you may be familiar with her because she popped up in quite a few Tom and Jerry episodes back in the day. Now, at first, she seemed to return his feelings, meaning that she acted like she loved him, but in actuality, she was just manipulating him because he was buying her stuff and she was using him. And she ended up leaving him for another cat named Butch, and in this variation, Butch is actually really rich. So in actuality, she didn't really love Tom, she was simply a gold digger. A sad part here is that Jerry kind of saw this from the jump, and he told Tom about this, but Tom didn't want to listen to him. And even after Tom finds out that this cat is only with him for his money, he still tries to get her back by buying her a bunch of stuff. But of course, since Tom is just a regular cat and Butch in this universe is rich, he can't compete, right? It would be like you buying somebody a Honda and then somebody else comes with a Ferrari. You have no chance, especially when that person only wants you for money and things that you can buy them. In the actual show, it would show like Tom bringing her flowers and then Butch would come with like a whole bouquet, or Tom giving her perfume and then Butch coming with like a whole tanker truck full of perfume, meaning that he just simply couldn't compete at all. And what I really find sad here is that Tom basically gives up his whole life savings for somebody who just doesn't want him. He buys her a diamond ring, and of course, as always, he cannot compete with Butch. In the actual show, we see that Tom turns to drinking, but instead of alcohol, it's milk. And during this time, Jerry is trying his best to get Tom out of this slump, but he's not really able to do so. And personally, I think the breaking point for Tom here is when he actually sees Butch and the white cat drive by in a limousine that has a just married sign on the back. Now, I think the saddest part about this animation, though, is that towards the end, Jerry actually is kissing a picture of his girlfriend that he has, and then he sees her drive by with another mouse and a just married sign on the back of their tiny car. Now, Jerry is also devastated at this point, so he goes to the train track with Tom, and they both sit there and wait for the train. Definitely a dark Tom and Jerry animation. The next version of Tom and Jerry that we see in this mod are actually pipified Tom and Jerry, and it should be no surprise to anybody that these characters actually ended up becoming victims of the corruption. I've covered many Pibby characters, and a lot of characters who are much stronger and more clever than Tom and Jerry have been caught by the corruption. And also, if you remember in the original Pibby trailer, a lot of the older cartoons were the first ones to be corrupted, so it kind of makes sense that these two would fall. The next character may be one that you're not as familiar with, and this character is called Lightning. Now, Lightning is interesting because he's from an episode of Tom and Jerry where basically Jerry is working with this mad scientist, and they work together to create a cat that basically has the soul of a dog. Or I guess to put more specifically, they put the soul of a dog into a very timid cat. Something I find very interesting here is that now this cat dog is very loyal to Jerry and of course the scientist that created him. So when Tom tries to come into the castle and get Jerry, Lightning actually defends Tom. A little fun fact here is that some people say that the dog's soul that actually got transferred into Lightning is that of Spike, which also pops up in this mod. The next character we see in the mod is actually Mousetail's Jerry, and if the name doesn't give it away enough, this is basically a version of Jerry that comes from the Undertale universe. And basically Undertale's characters are recreated in the version of Tom and Jerry characters. And I think it's a dead giveaway that Jerry actually takes the place of Sans. We can kind of tell by the jacket and the fact that his eye glows that lavender color. And if we're being honest, he has all the mannerisms of Sand. It's super obvious. Next in the mod, we have Warner Bloody Tom and Spike. And these characters basically come from an animated series called WB Splatter, or Warner Bloody Splatter, which is basically a very bloody version of Tom and Jerry cartoons, brutally harming each other. And this can be with different weapons or with just the tools that they have like fangs or claws. And the creepy part here is that some people say that they actually made these type of edits just to traumatize young viewers, which is just absolutely messed up. The next character that we have on our list is going to be Meme Mouse, and this character is actually a joke version of Jerry that is a reference to various internet memes. Some of these memes include I know who ate the cheese, cheeseburger, and Jerry crying with the puppy eyes, and I'll show you some pictures here. And a fun fact here is that Meme Mouse's voice actually comes from the Chinese server of the Tom and Jerry mobile game. Next up, we have a character named Tuffy, and this character is supposed to be the son of Jerry, and he's actually a minor character in the Tom and Jerry shows. At first, I thought he was supposed to be the D-side version of Jerry because I saw D-side boyfriend and D-side girlfriend there, but he's actually his own character. Now, those of you who have grown up watching Tom and Jerry, you probably know that Tuffy has been around for a very long time and have popped up in several episodes of Tom and Jerry. Sometimes he's portrayed as being like a baby, you even see him in a diaper. Other times he's portrayed as being like a very young mouse, but definitely not a baby. And it's always kind of hard to tell how Tuffy and Jerry are actually related. Sometimes it seems like Jerry adopted him. Other times it seems like he's Jerry's little brother. And sometimes it seems like he's Jerry's biological son. I don't think the creators actually ever came out and just definitively said how they're related. And I think they kind of want to keep it like that because Tuffy isn't necessarily a main character in the show. Another fun fact that some of you may remember about Tuffy too is that he was one of the few characters in Tom and Jerry that would actually speak. And normally when he would speak, it would be in French. The last character that we have in the free play mode is actually called Grunt Tom, and I actually don't think there's much backstory for this character. I simply think the developers probably have some respect for the Madness Combat series, so they wanted to put a little homage to the grunts into their actual mod. If you enjoyed this video, check out this video on the screen here, subscribe today to become a member of the Orseofkorse, and we'll see you tomorrow with another video. Peace, peace.